What's up, everybody? This is Alex Christoforou with the Duran, and I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. And today we're going to be taking a look at Tommy Robinson's Panodrama. Alexander, I saw the Panodrama the other day, the documentary from Tommy Robinson. I know that you also saw it as well. Let's get right into it. What are your first initial thoughts of the documentary?
Well, I thought he made a lot of claims at the beginning, setting us up for some huge revelations about, the way that this was going to be a tremendous hit job, this Panorama program that the BBC is preparing.
Can you explain
against
him before you?
Yeah, I mean, the BBC. Yeah. Okay, so the BBC is in the process of doing a Panorama program on Tommy Robinson. And Panorama is the big lead documentary news program that the BBC does. It's been its flagship current affairs program ever since the 1950s. It is in some ways the Rolls-Royce of documentaries done by the BBC, and it's widely followed. It's a widely followed TV program. Now, as I said, Tommy Robinson said that this was going to be a hit job on him, and he said that it was. He starts his program by making various claims about how that there are basically attempts to silence him and to discredit him, and the program Panodrama that he made unfolded, and I was waiting, I have to say, and watching the program, looking for these great examples of what was going to, which were going to expose, this terrible program that Panorama was making. And I have to say, what I saw didn't quite live up to Tommy Robinson's claims, in that I saw evidence of the BBC producers being, very generous with the BBC's money and drinking rather well. I saw evidence of BBC reporters trying to lead people that Tommy Robinson has been involved in to say critical things about him. And, of course, he made a great deal about the fact that there was this left-wing organisation that's very critical of him that the BBC has consulted. But I have to say that all of this is fairly typical of news media in Britain nowadays. I didn't think that this programme that he did broke any radical new ground. And I have to say that was my impression. I thought, in the end, it was rather underwhelming. But it did leave, for me, the big unanswered question of why the BBC feels the need to devote a whole Panorama program to Tommy Robinson at all.
Or why the BBC feels that they have to smear Tommy Robinson. Are they that threatened by him? Because you also had almost immediately, I think maybe 24 hours after the documentary, after Tommy Robinson's documentary, Facebook came down on Tommy Robinson, as did Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, which was obviously at the behest of the BBC. And so you can see that there's a collusion there between the biggest British mainstream media company and Facebook colluding to deplatform and suspend people. That's really scary, really bad. And then you get to the question, why is the BBC so threatened by Tommy Robinson? Which means that Tommy Robinson must have some weight behind him, some clout.
Right, okay, let's just unpack that. First of all, we don't know what this Panorama program is going to say because it hasn't yet been broadcast. We've been expecting it to be broadcast any time, but it never seems to appear. So until it is broadcast, I think we have to be careful what we say about it, and saying that it's going to smear him. We don't know what it's going to say, though. One can guess. But the bigger question, and for me, the more serious question, is twofold. Firstly, why does the BBC feel Tommy Robinson is so important as to make a programme about him? And secondly, why is it campaigning to silence him in the way that it is. And you said that it's, fairly well known that it was the BBC that went to Facebook and to Instagram and all those others.
We don't have, I just want to preface it, we don't have evidence that the BBC called up, Zuckerberg their Facebook and said, deplatform this guy. But looking at Alex Jones and looking at all the things that have happened, Tommy Robinson is fitting that same type of model.
I think we can be quite sure it was. Yeah. I mean, I've heard reports about this, and I've not seen it denied. I'm going to assume it's true until somebody tells me otherwise. It seems to me that that's exactly what is happening. And that begs so many questions about Tommy Robinson. Now, he's a controversial person. He says some things which I frankly find go far too far and which I don't agree with at all. But he does, and I've said this before, he does touch on certain issues that concern the British public. He talks about open borders. This is a very big issue in Britain. He talks about issues of race relations, also a big issue in Britain. Is it really appropriate to suppress him in this way? I don't think so. I think rather than suppressing Tommy Robinson, we ought to be talking about these issues far more frankly, because if we don't, then we're leaving the whole field to people like him. And if you don't like Tommy Robinson, then I think that is something you need to think about.
Well, you could debate him if you don't like him.
Absolutely. That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
I mean, there should be proper debates. There should be proper discussions. Let me give you an example of what concerns me about this. If we reel back a couple of months, back in the summer, when we first started talking about Tommy Robinson, and there were the contempt of court proceedings related to that court case, which he did a film outside about. And I said at the time on our programs that I thought that contempt of court decision that was made against him was wrong, and it was indeed found to be flawed in many ways by the English Court of Appeal. What Tommy Robinson was talking about then was a case involving a criminal gang of Muslim men, immigrant Muslim, white working class girls, to use them as sex objects. And many of these girls were underage. Now, this has been going on a lot in Britain. There have been several cases, in fact, there have been many cases of such criminal gangs operating in Britain. What is extraordinary to me is how little publicity this is getting. I have followed the British media very closely, and it struck me that there was far more coverage a few weeks ago of the Brett Kavanaugh case in the United States and of the allegations that Dr. Ford made against Brett Kavanaugh, which were never proved, and far more anger about that from certain people, certain columnists in places like The Guardian, than there was about these extraordinary criminal activities of criminal gangs in Britain persecuting and sexually abusing white working class English girls. Now, Tommy Robinson talks about that. Other people don't. Is it a surprise if many people who are also made very angry by this abuse of white English working class girls are concerned about it?
Systemic abuse that has been going on for years, that has affected hundreds, if not thousands, of underage girls. And I think you're exactly right. And I want to get to my question to you, Alexander, you kind of lead me into it here. You're exactly right. The media did not report it. I never knew about this if it was not for Tommy Robinson and what happened to him. And he was trying to get shut down in the summer as well. They were putting the guy in prison to shut him up because he was reporting on something that was fact, that a trial was going on about. And people like me had no idea this was happening in the UK. So, I mean, he did open up a lot of people's eyes, rightly so. And I get to my question, and you mentioned Brett Kavanaugh. On the flip side, though, when I was watching the documentary, something really struck me in that the BBC, I believe his name is Sweeney, John Sweeney, the host, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. John Sweeney.
He had Tommy Robinson's previous colleague, and they were drinking. He was drinking with her, and he was trying to lead her into a Me Too, a false Me Too sexual assault allegation that would have destroyed Tommy Robinson's life, his marriage, everything. So, I mean, is this not the ultimate hypocrisy unfolding from the BBC?
Well, I think it's the ultimate hypocrisy all round. I mean, as I said, it's quite clear to me that when it comes to questions of abuse against women, some types of abuse matter, or sometimes of alleged abuse matter, and some types of actual abuse apparently don't, or at least they don't matter anywhere near as much. Now, can I just come back to this? What you said about these cases of sex abuse of white English girls, and lots of them involved underage girls, that has been proved. And that has gone on for year upon year. Social services have not really investigated them. The police have been reluctant to investigate them too. And the media, well, there has been some reporting of these stories. There was a very, very good drama about it on British television, but nowhere near as much as this story merits. And of course, Tommy Robinson talks about this, and it's not surprising that he therefore gets attention. And, you know, here we have the attempt to use the Me Too thing to bring him down, but apparently far less interest in the plight of these white English girls who are actual victims. Why? Why are white English girls, working class English girls, apparently not considered so important that people really want to talk or write about them?
Well, why?
Well, I think there's many reasons. Firstly, I think there is a question of class. And let's be straightforward about this. These people come from the English working and underclass, and they're not as important to the metropolitan establishment in London as someone like Dr. Ford is in the United States, or people analogous to that. And we have to be straightforward about this, because I don't think there's any question about this. I think some of that came over, by the way, in this documentary that Robinson has made. So there's a question of class. There's also a question of race, or of inter-ethnic relations. There was the fact that the abusers in these cases are Muslim men. Makes some people in Britain within the metropolitan elite very unwilling to point their finger at the abusers in just the same way that you saw during the German sex abuse cases during the fairs, the Easter fairs that happened in Germany after the asylum, after the doors were opened to asylum seekers from the Middle East to rush into Germany. There was an unwillingness to talk about it, also because there was an unwillingness to give traction, perhaps, to the anti-immigrant arguments or the people who oppose open borders. But frankly, I think there's something else, which is that I think a lot of this Me Too thing is now become a political a system of political control. So it's used against people like Brett Kavanaugh in the United States because he's a conservative. It's used against Tommy Robinson because he too is saying things that the metropolitan liberal elite doesn't like. And I think that when something like that is being used as a system of political control, and in order to silence people, that is extremely bad, and it calls into question the whole agenda behind it.
What did you make of the confrontation between Robinson and Sweeney in the documentary, where Robinson reveals to him that, he had the hidden camera and he was filming everything, Sweeney's interaction with his colleague, I forgot her name, but with his former colleague. And they start, going at it. Sweeney, of course, was refuting Robinson's claims that he was trying to set him up and that he was going to smear him. Robinson was telling Sweeney, you were coming after me to destroy me. You were going to pin a Me Too allegation on me. This was a smear job, etc. What did you make of that allegation? And do you think legally it has any kind of future for either side?
No, I don't. No, I don't think it does, and I'll tell you straight away. We don't know. We can't say that until this Panorama program itself comes out. I mean, we don't know what's going to be in that Panorama program. I'm starting to have doubts, by the way, that we're ever going to see a Panorama program like that. The question is not whether it is legal, anything illegal was done. It is whether or not trying to induce people to talk in that way about the target of a program is ethical or proper journalism. And frankly, I don't think it is. But I have to say, it happens in Britain all the time. I mean, if you look at our media here, I mean, it is a cesspit of this kind of thing.
So essentially, Tommy Robinson kind of just exposed a little further something that most of the British populace kind of knows in their gut as to what's happening.
Well, indeed so. May I just say something? I mean, of course, it's a bit of a shock to see the BBC, which is supposed to be a rather more, a proper organisation doing this sort of thing. But the British media gets up to all sorts of things. I mean, a couple of years ago, there was a big scandal when it turned out that various British newspapers were busy hacking people's mobile phones and were getting information about that. And there was also another scandal, a related scandal, when it turned out that sections of the British media were getting information from the police and were giving gifts or presents to senior police officers to develop good relationships with them. And this sort of thing goes on in Britain. We have to be straightforward about it. I mean, the British media is in desperate need of proper regulation and proper accountability. It's a shock to see that the BBC is also going down some of these routes because, of course, it's supposed to be more regulated than other parts of the media is. But I can't say any of this at all surprised me.
And one of the major themes of the Robinson documentary, especially towards the end, was Tommy's message to the viewers to opt out of the license, the fee for you can explain that to our viewers as well, because I think the UK has a very interesting obligation for citizens that they actually pay to the TV licensing fee, so they pay to get to fund the BBC essentially. And Tommy Robinson was pushing at the end, opt out of this. Yeah. So do you think that's going to be effective?
No, I don't think it is, because, of course, it's backed by the law. It's a kind of tax. Everybody who owns a television in Britain has to pay a flat amount of money. It's around £130 each year, which goes directly to the BBC to fund the BBC. That theoretically is supposed to make the BBC independent of the British government, but in reality, it just means that the British taxpayer pays the BBC in a slightly different way. So it's not going to work because, as I said, people are not going to risk legal action by owning having TVs and not paying this tax, this license fee. But and I think actually, dare I say it, Tommy Robinson inciting people not to pay that license fee might conceivably get him into some kind of legal problems, though I don't think so. But, it does draw attention to the fact, which Tommy Robinson was making, that the BBC is a publicly funded service. Right. It is supposed to be a channel, a broadcaster serving the interests of the entire British population, which pays for it. And in reality, as he's saying in his programme, it is very much reflecting the attitudes of the metropolitan elite and the establishment.
Who do you think came out ahead in the at the end of the documentary? You think Tommy Robinson came out ahead? You think the BBC and Sweeney, or you think this was pretty much a wash?
I don't think, as I said, for me, this documentary said anything that was dramatically new. But I do think the whole Tommy Robinson phenomenon, the phenomenon of the man he is very revealing about the state of Britain today. I mean, Tommy Robinson has never held elected office. He's not a member of any major political party. He is now a member of UKIP, but UKIP, without Nigel Farage leading it, has gone into precipitous decline. And he has, shall we say, an interesting past. And yet this man is able to attract thousands of people to come out and support him in demonstrations. And he is also the subject of dramas, documentaries by the BBC. It is a sign, I think, of the very dysfunctional state of British politics, that it is being left to someone like Tommy Robinson to articulate concerns that British people have and which the political system is no longer addressing.
When they go to deplatform him and
well,
shut him down, it shows that they're panicking and they're scared.
Exactly, that's exactly the whole point. I mean, if he wasn't gaining traction, they wouldn't need to do these things, and that in itself is a sign of the traction he is achieving. Because, as I said, if he was somebody who was sitting on a soapbox in Hyde Park Corner and nobody paid any attention to him, they wouldn't need to take these steps.
Right. Well put. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on that notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. Visit the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support the Duran. In the description box down below, you'll find links to our PayPal and Patreon pages. Please donate to the Duran. That really helps us out a lot. And you can get a copy of this video in audio format. Follow us on iTunes and SoundCloud as well. Go to theduran.com and see all the articles that Alexander is looking up to every day as well. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you once again. Until next time, everybody, take care.